We're just over 24 hours from the start of the Four Nations Cup tournament. What do the lines look like? Who do we think is going to win? We'll preview the tournament and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. What's happening, Dave? How we feeling on a Tuesday?
Feeling pretty good, getting that international hockey itch.
Yeah, the NHL. Well, we're on hiatus now officially for the Four Nations face-off. We're going to kind of preview, I guess, the tournament this weekend. We've got the lines all came out. Everyone's reported, and we've got our first practices under our belt, so we know, who's playing with who. After weeks of speculation, we kind of got an idea of what the lines are going to look like. Canada and Sweden kick off the tournament on Wednesday, so that's going to be the inaugural game to kick things off, and so I'm excited for it. We're going to take a look at all four teams, take a look at the lineups, and just a kind of refresher of who made the team, because dude, I forgot that Seth Jarvis made Canada. I'll be completely honest. I was looking at the lines, I was like, Seth Jarvis made the team, and like Mark Scheifele didn't, and Zach Hyman didn't. They went with Seth Jarvis, which still kind of baffles me. But nice little primer for today, Dave.
Well, I do remember the Seth Jarvis one because I did write a Team Canada B story. So I wrote about how Scheifele was robbed.
Yeah, he was.
Chance.
Well, and he had an opportunity to maybe get back onto the team because Sidney Crosby is hurt, and he's been hurt the last couple of games. He didn't play the final two games of the season for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but apparently all systems go for Sid to captain Canada.
Yeah, I really, when I saw this whole Sidney Crosby mystery injury, and well, we had an idea what the injury was, but like when we were talking about like, is he gonna make it there for the Four Nations? As soon as I heard he was going to be flying to Montreal, I said like he's not going there without the whole idea, like the thought of he's going to play, right? He's been practicing. Is much different than the Quinn Hughes situation, in my opinion, where it's like the guy clearly was laboring with something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's good to see because I think Crosby is just like, when you think like he's Captain Canada, man. Like I've been waiting to see Crosby, play in a international tournament. Yeah, technically 2016 was the last one. We need to think of the World Cup of Hockey back then, but yeah, there's something to be said. Like you want your best players to be there. I'm sure the U.S. are quite unhappy with the fact they won't have Quinn Hughes. It's an unfortunate situation. And then you've got like a lot of teams are hit hard by injuries. I know we're going to discuss those teams a little bit more, but like I look at, especially with Canada, like they got pretty fortunate. I think if anything, somebody was maybe hoping that an injury would have happened in goal, so then you could maybe find a way to get Logan Thompson there.
Yeah. I mean, I think when all said and done, you look at the roster, and I think if it was chosen today, it might be a little different. I mean, that's a fun exercise we could do at some point throughout the week. But like if we were to choose it today, what would the team look like? Maybe we'll do that, on tomorrow's show or something before the games get played. But I will say, yeah, they're pretty lucky. Only the one injury with Alex Pietrangelo deciding that he was going to take the 2 weeks to rest his body essentially and opted out of the tournament. And Drew Doughty ends up getting the tap on the shoulder to play, which I know a lot of Canadians were hoping that Doughty would get the opportunity. Leaf fans hoping it would be Tanev, but I think Drew Doughty's a pretty good option as well. And, Mark Scheifele, I believe, would have been, the number one replacement for Crosby if Sid decided that he wasn't going to be able to play. But he is, and he's going to play. He's going to captain Canada to hopefully a championship. That's obviously what everyone's hoping to do. Let's take a look at what the lineup looked like for the Canadians at their first open practice. And if you're watching up on YouTube, you see right there, Mitch Marner, top line right winger, next to Connor McDavid, Sammy Reinhart as the left winger. So Reinhart, McDavid, and Mitch Marner is Canada's top line. Did you anticipate seeing that, Dave?
Frankly, I didn't. I knew Marner was going to factor somewhere in this lineup. I just wasn't sure if they were going to put him with McDavid. I mean, there's so many options. There's like a wealth of options on this team, but I mean, it's a nice nod there for Marner to, not just McDavid, but also Reinhardt too. He had an incredible year last year, and he's playing really well this year. So that's gonna be an interesting top line to go up against. I mean, any team that's gonna find a way to shut down McDavid had a hard time. Now you got to figure out how you're gonna deal with Reinhardt and Marner on that same line.
Well, what John Cooper say something how you got the brains, you've got the speed, and you've got the ability or something like that. Like, you had a really good line for when asked, like, what does he think of this line and what that they can be. And he had a pretty solid line. I'm trying to see if I can find it right now. You've got speed, you've got brains, and you've got guys that can shoot it in the net. That was his reaction when asked about creating the Reinhart, McDavid, and Mitch Marner line. But that's going to be pretty cool. A precursor to what we might see in Toronto for many years down the road. Am I right, Dave? Am I right, Dave?
Hey, the cap is going up, man. Cap is going up. Right
up.
time.
Might be able to fit yourself a Connie McDavid at some point. All right, let's take a look at what the rest of the roster looks like for Team Canada and what they elected to do with the lineup. So John Cooper rolling with Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, and Mark Stone. This is going to be a pure checking line, it feels like, but that can absolutely score. I mean, Nathan McKinnon, absolute workhorse line. Like Nate McKinnon and Sidney Crosby, two of the best players to ever play the game. Certainly McKinnon right now, maybe the best player in the league, leading everyone in points and whatnot. And then Mark Stone has been a absolute beautician when it comes to defending. Like, he is one of the best two-way players in the game. Selke nominations, year after year. This is going to be a tough line to play against, a real matchup line for Canada, I would think, at the I was going to call it the Olympics, at the Four Nations Championship.
Yeah, I mean, you knew Crosby and McKinnon were going to play together. You got the Cole Harbor boys there. Stone being there, that's an interesting one, but I guess it really just underscores that you could put this lineup against anybody and any situation, and they're going to feast.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see Crosby and McKinnon play together. It's going to be magical.
It's going to be great. And at some point we'll see, McDavid factor in there, and I can't wait. All right, let's look at the third line for the Canadians from what we saw in practice today. Braden Point, Brad Marchand, and Seth Jarvis. Yeah, this is the line where I looked. I'm like, oh, yeah, right. Seth Jarvis is on Canada. That's interesting, but okay. Good for you, Seth. Let's see. Let's go out there and prove your worth. But that'll be a tough line to play against. Braden Point, such a big time player, right? Like, he obviously rises to the occasion. He's a playoff kind of player. And you're going to see him and Marchand kind of, they know how to play in the big game. So I kind of like what they got cooking there.
To me, that's like the speed line. Yeah, all those guys have wheels, and they're like, it's funny. I think they're all like kind of like, I think Jarvis has got a little bit of size, but like Point and Marchand, they ain't the biggest players, so that's going to be interesting how John Cooper will kind of deploy them for sure.
Yeah, and this fourth line, it's another kind of matchup line that I like. Anthony Cirelli, Sam Bennett, and Brandon Hagel but they can score too. Like Hagel's, got 25 goals on the year. He's up in that range. Cirelli can provide a little bit of offense. And then, Sam Bennett, he's just a sandpaper dude. He'll be a role player. He'll go to the net and try and bang at some rebounds and try and create some secondary offense. But that's what the forward group looks like for Team Canada. Quickly, let's take a look at the blue line for the Canadians. Devon Toews and Cale Makar, teammates in Colorado. Makes way too much sense just to put them together for Team Canada. Take a look at the second pair, projected second pair. You've got Josh Morrissey with Colton Parayko. And then on the third pair, as of right now, it's Shea Theodore and Drew Doughty. Travis Sanheim is the seventh defenseman. I imagine he will end up factoring in at some point. So there's the blue line for the Maple Leafs, Dave.
For Team Canada, you mean?
Sorry, for Team Canada. I wish the Maple Leafs blue line looked like that. Boy, would that be awesome.
Let's go. Cap's going up, guys. Cap's going up. I look at it as, you mean that top pairing, you already knew that was the no-brainer. That second pair, Morrissey and Parayko, you're talking about mammoths.
Yeah.
Like just absolute mammoths on that second pairing. And then like Doughty, I'm very curious because like coming into this, it was like he was never injured. These guys playing like 27, 28, 29 minutes a night. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in that. Like that to me might be your kind of matchup pairing a little bit. Like they both kind of do like Theodore's got a bit of like that offensive punch, but Doughty, I'm assuming you're going to be seeing a lot of him because that guy just plays so much.
Just nasty to play against. All right. Do you want to take a look at what PP1 looks like really quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam Reinhart, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, and Cale Makar. I mean, that's just gross. Like, no one has more power play goals in the last 2 years than Sam Reinhart. You've got McKinnon, you've got Crosby, you've got Makar, and obviously the best player in the world, McDavid. That's going to be a stupid power play. I can't wait to see that cook.
If that power play cannot score, we have we have no hope for humanity. Like it's just like that should be an instant power play goal every time that unit goes up on the ice.
It'll be men amongst boys. It truly will be. Or it feels like it'll be that way.
That's gonna be a track. Like whoever's on the penalty kill on the opposing team when that unit goes up, that is going to be a track meet because you got McDavid that can whip it around. You got McKinnon that's a horse that's just going to be able to do the same thing. Makar, like the best skating defenseman in the league, and then Crosby will be the
down low skate circles around you.
And you don't want the puck on his stick in front of the net because he's going to be the net front guy. And then Reinhart might benefit the most because everyone's going to be looking at all the other guys, and Reinhardt's like, don't forget about me.
Yeah, I'll just sit here in my window, get a puck, rip it. All right, there we go. Go up on the board. 1-0 Canada. It's going to be a really fun power play to watch. And I think Mitch Marner is on the second power play unit. Yeah. As well. And then obviously the goaltenders, we're looking at Jordan Binnington, Sam Montembeault, but I believe Aiden Hill as of now is the front runner. I'm sure we'll see a healthy dose of both of those goaltenders throughout the tournament, Aiden Hill and Jordan Binnington. We'll see if Montembeault plays. I don't know. Probably not, though. It's too short of a tournament.
Unless Canada is secured, because I don't know how it works.
But then even at that point, it's like, well, let's get one of these other guys in. It's only it's a 2-week tournament. It's less than that technically.
It's 8 days.
It's 8 days. 8 days. You're playing 4 games probably, I think 4 or 5 games. So you're just going to want to play those two goaltenders. And, unless an injury occurs, which is possible. But that's what it looks like for Team Canada. Let's take a look at the Americans, the Swedes, and the Finns on the other side. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast. This is your First Nations preview edition of the show, and we'll continue next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast.
You just realized your business needed to hire somebody yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored job. Let's put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates fast. Obviously, you don't want to be in a position where you need to find somebody quickly. But if you do, guess what? The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly why you need Indeed sponsored job, so that it makes sure that your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti, and we're previewing the Four Nations Championship. We just went through what Team Canada will look like. Let's shift down south and take a look at Auston Matthews, Team USA. Remember, Matthews wearing the C, but not on the top line. According to, I don't know. I mean, there's really like 3 or 4 top lines, I suppose. But on Daily Faceoff, he is technically on the second line. But the first line, you're looking at Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, and Matt Tkachuk as your top line. Pretty solid, but I would say Canada's top line definitely takes the cake there. Second line is where we see Auston Matthews centering Jack Hughes and Jake Gensel. Like, you could argue that that's a better line than the one above it. Yeah.
I mean, Gensel's having an incredible year. Jack Hughes will be the speed hound, and Auston Matthews. A lot of people, it's funny that we're saying like maybe not the best, not the best fit to have like a Gensel on that line. Maybe you put someone like a Tkachuk there just to give you that puck hounding presence there. But hey, I mean, still a pretty good line. That's Jack Hughes and Austin. Jack Hughes, I know, has been saying he can't wait to play with Auston Matthews.
Yeah,
which is gonna be a fun thing to see.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a fun little lineup to watch. Maybe like a Brady Tkachuk could have been the third on that line possibly, but he is on Team USA and he is on the right side on the third line with JT Miller and Matt Boldy. There's a matchup line. That's going to be a tough line to play against. Yeah. Like JT Miller and Brady Tkachuk, both kind of similar players. They wear their heart on the sleeves. They are as tough as they come. They play the game so hard. And Matt Boldy's another one of those young up-and-coming power forwards who's kind of working himself into that style of player. So this is going to be a very, very hard line to play against. This is the matchup line for Team USA.
Yeah, especially it's going to be the pain in the butt line to play against, especially with Brady Tkachuk there.
Yeah, and
look, we'll see how JT Miller coming into this Four Nations has kind of felt a bit rejuvenated since he joined the Rangers. So Team USA got JT Miller going at the right time. So thank the Canucks for that one, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fourth line: Brock Nelson, Vincent Trocheck, and Dylan Larkin. Nelson, another guy I just forgot was on the Four Nations face-off roster, and I'm looking like, oh yeah, right, Brock Nelson. So yeah, there's another Leafs trade candidate that'll be someone to keep an eye on throughout the Four Nations tournament. But yeah, Brock Nelson, it's the role players. It felt like there's a lot of role players for a bunch of different teams, like Nelson, Sam Bennett, like those guys very much role players, and we'll see what they got in them. But it's the blue line that really is what separates the Americans from the Canadians. Like, they have got unbelievable defense and goaltending. Now, they will be without Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks, who missed the last week of the season for Vancouver, and then obviously didn't play against Toronto and was listed as out for the tournament to rest up and hopefully be back when the Canucks resume in a couple of weeks. But still a pretty solid blue line. Anyways, like Jacob Slavin and Adam Fox, two of the best defensemen in the NHL, right? Like Fox, perennial Defenseman of the year candidate. Slavin has been known as the best defensive defenseman for how many years now? Like, that's just an elite top pair right there.
Yeah, especially like Slavin's one of those underrated defensive defensemen. Just, you see him play the toughest matchups all the time. He's given the care. Like, he's the reason why the Hurricanes have like a very stout defense. And like Fox, I know that the Rangers have been kind of like, for some Rangers fans have been disappointed with Fox because he hasn't produced at like when he won in the Norris Trophy a few years ago.
Yeah,
but he's still a quality defenseman. He's their, like, Quinn Hughes was their number one guy, but Fox is like that. He's right there.
Yeah, for sure he is. In terms of being like a two-way stud, yeah. But it's okay because Zach Werenski is also on the team. He's healthy. He was another one of those guys that had a question mark leading into it in the final week, but he's good to go. He ended up finding his way into Columbus's lineup prior to the break, and he's going to play in the third or on the second pair alongside Charlie McAvoy. Man, what a pairing right there. Werenski and McAvoy. I mean, that's going to be so tough to play against. And like, Werenski's having a year, an absolute season. Like, Zach Werenski's got, I think he's got like almost 20 goals this season, up over 50 points. Like, he's having such a good year for Columbus. A big reason for why that team's in a playoff race. Zach Werenski and then McAvoy. That's another really, really good pairing. And it'll shut some people down.
Yeah, and Werenski's going to like you're talking about like the offense you're missing from Quinn Hughes. Zach Werenski's going to provide that.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the third pair, you got Noah Hannafin and Brock Faber. So you got a youngster and Brock Faber coming up, getting an opportunity to represent his country. And then Noah Hannafin has just been a kind of a staple in the league for many years. Perfect kind of second pair guy who can give you, some solid two-way minutes. That's exactly what he's going to do here for the Americans. All right, let's take a look at the power play. What does PP1 look like for USA? I would imagine we see Auston Matthews on it as per usual, and he is. We've got Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, Matthew Tkachuk, and Auston Matthews, and then Zach Werenski is on the first unit power play as the lone defenseman. So Matthews obviously on PP1. Interesting to have him at the top of at the point though, as opposed to in the middle or on one of the flanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eichel, he's played predominantly, like, I guess they like the way he's wins draws and things like that. But I'm very surprised that he's not like on one of the walls.
Like, I probably would have flipped him with Jack Hughes.
Yeah, like I don't see Jack Hughes as the big shooter on this power play, right? And like, you got the bomb at the point with Werenski. So maybe it'll be one of those where things will move around a bit and you'll see Tkachuk take a little bit more of the net front battles there. And like, this is going to be one of those where I'm wondering how they're going to distribute the puck on that power play. Like, we talked about Canada's power play being pretty good. This is not that far off because you got guys who can produce. But like, it's a different, it feels like it's got a different vibe to it than what Canada's got, like the speed and just talent and talent there. And like US, there's talent, but it's also like a bit of like guys who will do the grunt work too with like Tkachuk and Eichel.
Character team. It's a character team for sure. And they've got the best goalie in the world too, and Connor McDavid, who's, having a heart-worthy season. I actually saw someone wrote about that recently, about how he's having a heart-worthy season. Yeah, Connor McDavid and Jake Ottinger will be the goaltenders for Team USA. I think Swayman the third. Was it Swayman as the third goaltender? Yeah, so Swayman will be the third goalie for those guys. All right, on the other side, we'll take a look at William Nylander's Sweden, and Hakanpää will no longer be playing for Finland. We'll take a look at the Finns roster as well. That's next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. When the game faces off, the NHL action is getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even If you're missing in the opening faceoff, but you want to bet on a third period comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to score a goal, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you here on the show. We're previewing the Four Nations tournament, the Four Nations face-off. We've gone through Canada, U.S., and now let's take a look at William Nylander's team, Sweden. We know that Nylander will be wearing an A as the alternate captain on Sweden. Hedman is the captain, and he'll also be featured on the top line alongside Mika Zibanejad and Rickard Rakell. How do you feel about Zibanejad and Rakell as Nylander's line mates?
Zibanejad, I can kind of understand. Rickard Rakell, he's had a good year, but I thought maybe there would have been some different options to have a little higher up in this in the top line for Sweden. Like when I think of top line players for Sweden, I don't know if I think of
Sundin, the Sedins, like they've had a lot of talent over the years for Team Sweden. They certainly have.
And the thing is, Rickard Rakell was an injury replacement for William Karlsson.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't even initially in the picture, and now he's on the top line. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe they feel a little bit. I'm trying to think who the GM is for Sweden and if they have any ties to Rickard Rakell or the coaches for Sweden. But, you know, I think they just like what he can give them. All right, Philip Forsberg, Elias Pettersson, and Adrian Kempe.
This is more like the top line. Right.
Well, I think this is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, again, these are super teams, whether it's the top line, second line, whoever's performing that day, you consider the top line. But yeah, Pettersson and Forsberg, that should be, assuming Pettersson, who pretty sure he ended on a 6-game point streak going into the Four Nations tournament when he got that assist on Hronek the other night on the Hronek goal against Toronto. I think that's 6 straight games where he's recorded a point. So he's kind of getting going himself. So that'll be good for Team Sweden. I think him and Forsberg. I mean, if the way he fed Hronek in that game against Toronto, if he can, you know, somehow find a way to sauce some pucks over to Philly Forsberg, those two should be able to combine for some. Adrian Kempe too can score. He's a really, really talented player that doesn't get enough love, in my opinion, in the NHL. All right, keep taking a look at the lineup for Team Sweden. Joel Eriksson Ek as the third line center with Jesper Bratt and Lucas Raymond, who is really ripping it up ever since the coaching change. This is going to be a pretty fun line to watch as well. So I would say when we're taking a look, actually, quickly, let's look at the fourth line too, just because then I have just an overall point. Elias Lindholm, Victor Arvidsson, and Gustav Nyquist. So overall, like you look at Sweden, obviously we take a look at Canada, and you take a look at USA, star power all throughout the lineup, right? Mm-hmm. Sweden's got a lot of just good players, you know, it's a lot of solid players, but no stars. Like there's not a lot of star talent there. Like you've got William Nylander, you've got Philip Forsberg, if you want to consider him a star. Pettersson, when he's playing at his best, is obviously a star, but they don't really have like the McKinnons, the Crosbys, the Matthews, the Hughes, the Kachucks of the world. This is a team that's going to have to kind of be by committee and really, you know, rely on some pretty good defending and goaltending to get it done here.
Yeah, and like when I was looking at this lineup and we were talking about like, oh, Rickard Rakell with Nylander, I'm like, Jesper Bratt might have been the better option. On that line. I mean, things can change.
Right.
Like, this is not like
second period. We're gonna see that. We could probably see that happen realistically.
Right. But like, yeah, like Sweden, the talent level does drop off a little bit when you get outside of the top 6. But yeah, I mean, you look at once we bring up the rest of the line, but you're gonna see like why Sweden remains such a tough team to go up against in international hockey. Because yeah, sometimes you look at the names like, oh, but this is not like what Canada and the US put together. They play like the way they play, it's very tough to go up against, and they're very structured in a lot of ways. But the blue line is where I think every team Sweden always takes the cake.
Yeah, let's take a look at the blue line. We're looking at the captain, Victor Hedman, with Jonas Brodin, who just got back from Minnesota, ready to play in time for the Four Nations tournament. Rasmus Dahlin and Rasmus Anderson, the Rasmus line. That'll be really tough to play against. I mean, these are two bona fide top pair defensemen going, setting up next to each other. That'll be a tough pairing to play against if you're Canada, USA, or Finland. And then Erik Karlsson and Mattias Ekholm, kind of a veteran duo, who've played a lot for Team Sweden throughout their careers. That'll be an interesting duo to see at work here. And Erik Karlsson, clearly a very polarizing player, especially at this stage of his career, but he can always kind of turn the clock back on a dime and provide some offense, jump up into the rush. So I'll be excited to see what Erik Karlsson can do when he puts on that yellow sweater.
Yeah, I mean, that blue line is just going to be so much fun to watch. And like Erik Karlsson, like him as your third pairing defenseman, like, and also, yeah, so like Forsling, he was ill, so he wasn't factored into the lines. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of him as the tournament goes on. Like,
oh yeah,
imagine a team going up against a Victor Hedman, Gustav Forsling pairing. That's going to be
that's probably what it'll end up being. Like Brodin, yeah. I would imagine like that he's a placeholder for Forsling, I would think at this point. I mean, he could, like, Brodin's a good defenseman, don't get me wrong, he could totally be on the top pair. But yeah, you're talking about Forsling, who's been one of the best defensemen in the league for the last 3 years or so. Definitely one of the more up-and-coming defensemen at this point. Goaltending-wise, you're taking a look at what they got in the crease. I mean, no Henrik Lundqvist. For a long time, Henrik Lundqvist was the guy who was always going to be in net for them. But no, instead, you're going to take a look at Philip Gustafsson and Linus Ullmark. So Jacob Markstrom was supposed to be on the team, and then he suffered an injury a couple weeks back with the Devils, so he is unable to play. So Gustafsson and Ullmark are the two goaltenders who are going to split time in the crease here for Sweden. And I mean, Ullmark, pretty good goalie. He's back from injury now himself with Ottawa. He's played okay this season, but Gustafsson quietly putting together a Vezina caliber year himself. So, good goaltending again in Sweden, and it's Canada-Sweden to kick things off on Wednesday to start things off for the Four Nations Championship. And just taking a look over on FanDuel right now, Canada favored by -215, -105 on the spread. The over-under is set at 5.5. Interestingly enough, all the over-unders set at 5.5 throughout the first couple of games. So it looks like FanDuel and the sports books expecting a low-scoring tournament. It looks like, which is kind of interesting for an all-star tournament.
Well, you would expect to see a lot of, like, I just remember seeing a lot of goals in the games I watched from the World Cup of Hockey, which is probably like similar tournament in my opinion. But like, maybe they just feel like coaching is going to play a big factor, matchups and things like that. I mean, no offense to Finland, like half the team's hurt. They literally had 11 skaters and 2 goalies at practice on Monday. Like, they're going to get beat up a little bit, in my opinion, because especially when you lost Heiskanen on that blue line. I mean, do you want me to show you what they're projecting?
Oh, yeah. We're going to get to it. Like, Finland, they're currently, like, when you look at on FanDuel, like, they are 4th best odds to win the championship. Far distant 4th, too. Like, it's Canada at +145, USA at +155, Sweden at +420, and then Finland all the way down at +1,000. So yeah, there's quite a leap there, a drop off from Sweden to Finland. But let's take a look at the roster to close out our preview here. You've got Barkov with Laine and Teuvo Teravainen, and then you're taking a look at the next line here: Sebastian Aho, Mikko Rantanen, and Arturi Lehkonen. Obviously, Aho and Rantanen, they've been playing together, trying to get that chemistry rocking and rolling. Capo Caco, who's kind of figuring things out in Seattle, by the way. I don't know if you've, been watching what's going on there, but I think he's got, 18 points in 25 games, something like that since the trade. He's been pretty solid. He'll be with Rupe Hintz and Mikael Granlund. And then on the fourth line, we're taking a look at Anton Lundell, Joel Armia, and Eetu Luosterainen. So, yeah, it gets a little thin as you get toward the bottom of the roster, but again, it's role players like Joel Armia and Luosterainen. Like, these are role players, right? Like, that's what they're brought in to be. They know they're not going to score, and they're not going to put up the offense that a Brandon Hagel can put up as a fourth line winger for Canada. But can they limit Hagel from scoring and keep him off the board? That's what they're going to have to do. Keep it low scoring. Let's take a look at the blue line also. So Esa Lindell and Olli Mata. Ooh, tough top line. You got Olli Mata on the top line at this point. Juuso Valimaki and Henri Jokiharju of the Buffalo Sabres. And then your third pair, Nico Mikkola and Urho Vakanainen. This is probably... No, not probably. This is 1,000% the weakest position group in the entire tournament is the Finnish blue line. But again, Miro Heiskanen and Jani Hakanpää, I guess, were two players who they had kind of pinpointed as, dudes who are going to play on this blue line, and the injuries obviously forced them out of the tournament, which made this a really, really bleak looking blue line for Finland. I don't know if they stand much of a chance to win a single game at this tournament.
Yeah, no, it's so bleak. Even with Heiskanen there, it's like, man, like they were relying on like Heiskanen and a broken Hakanpää to be able to compete in this tournament. Just like I feel so sorry for UC Saros. That man and Kevin Lankinen. Those two are going to have
siege. They'll be under siege the whole tournament.
This Finland team is probably going to try so hard to be the defensive stall. Like, they're gonna have to keep things so simple defensively and just pray that their goaltenders steal games.
For real. Yeah. That's exactly what they're gonna have to do for sure. UC Saros and Kevin Lankinen, the goaltenders for Team Finland. So when all's said and done, Dave, who wins?
Oh, come on. It's Canada.
Do you think it's Canada, or is your nationalistic pride telling you Canada's going to win?
I know the goal. Everyone's talking about the goaltending with this team. When you look at that lineup, you're telling me that lineup can't figure out a way with that goaltending?
The American lineup is just as good.
It's going to be, I guess, going to be, in my opinion. Well, I mean, if there's going to be an upset, it could be Sweden. That would be an upset.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think it's a 2-horse race, right?
It should be a 2-horse race, but we know weird things happen in these tournaments. But in my opinion, Canada's just too deep in every position. Like, U.S. has good players. Canada has the best players, minus the goaltend. The only way I can see Canada struggling,
like, I like the American blue line better than the Canadian blue line.
It's pretty equitable. I just think Makar is such a, like, he trumps
the best.
He's the best guy there. If Drew Doughty is an X factor for me on that blue line for Canada.
Turn the clock back and look like, vintage 2014 Drew Doughty at the was it Sochi Olympics?
Like, before he got injured, he was like almost, he was still having great seasons out there in LA. Like, I don't think he gets enough credit for, at 35, what he's able to do on a nightly basis for LA. Now, they were able to withstand that injury, which I think goes to show how good LA has been this year. But, like, it's no secret. Doughty, like when Pietrangelo pulled out, I had Doughty as the guy for me just because Canada's. I mean, they just like to have a Doughty being out there in any situation is just so like it's a luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. My best bet for the tournament, by the way, I'm just taking a look on FanDuel. Tournament, most points scored in the tournament. What do you think?
Nathan McKinnon for me.
You think McKinnon, eh?
McKinnon or Reinhart?
Reinhart? Points, not goals.
Points?
Yes.
Okay, McKinnon or McDavid?
Right. So those are the two top guys. McDavid at plus 750, McKinnon at plus 950. So you throw $5, $10 on both of those. If one of them hit, you're gonna be happy, right?
Yeah, well, right now.
So $10 on McKinnon, that's $95. $10 on McDavid, that's $75. You're kind of hedging by betting both, but if either win, you're still gonna come out.
You're coming out in the green. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If
it happens, not a lock. Just
there's no locks in gambling, ladies and gentlemen.
No, unless it's a lock, then it's a lock.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying.
All right. I think that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'm excited for the games. I think tomorrow Sweden, Canada kick things off, so we'll probably preview that. And it'll be Marner versus Nylander. Do they drop the mitts in that one? I don't know. We'll talk about that and more, and continue to chat all things Leafs as well throughout the next couple of weeks. So we're not going to totally put the Leafs on the back burner. We got lots of trade deadline talk to get through as well. But that'll do it for us here today on the pod. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow the show at Locked On Leafs, and Dave as well at D_Morassutti. We're back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.